Welcome back to Beyond the Helmet. This is the BTH pod hosted by Steve McGrath, myself. And today I am so pleased because I get to chop it up with a man that spent 17 years in the NFL, Pro Bowler, Super Bowl champion. But depending on the demographic, maybe you just know him as Big Bad Brad on TikTok. I don't know. We're going to get into it though, but I am joined today by the Brad Johnson. Brad, thanks for taking the time this morning. How are you?
Doing great. Appreciate you having me on your show. We'll have a blast here. Tell some good stories.
Now, is it weird for you at all to be connecting to like a brand new demographic that didn't watch you play and they only know you as the trick shot extraordinaire?
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny. I've never done anything social media at all. Like I didn't know how to get on Twitter, Instagram. I didn't know any of that stuff. So in the pandemic, my kids started getting on TikTok like everybody did, kind of wasting some time. And they wouldn't let me get in their videos, and they do dance videos and stuff like that because I couldn't dance. But then I started making videos of my career and workout videos, and then I started making trick shots. And all these trick shots I do them, they're in sequences. So it's not just like one shot and then splice them together. It's a series of 3, 4, 5 shots in a row. And it could happen in 10 minutes, and then it could happen in 3 hours. So a little bit more work than people think, but I have fun doing it. So a lot of people, they'll say, hey, there's the TikTok guy. There's the TikTok guy, so I've had some funny stories about making these videos, but what I do find is when I put stuff out there on social media, I like to have fun with it instead of all this kind of real hard news. I like to have fun with it. Maybe some guys can laugh at it for 30 seconds of the day of their life.
I think we all need a little laughter. We need an escape for a second. So thank you for doing what you can to provide that. I mean, it makes me appreciate who you were as a basketball player, because these are not just, football throws, which I'm sure we've probably, done 1 or 2 of those before in your life. But the basketball to me is pretty impressive. So I want to get into that part of just your development as an athlete. But first, you mentioned spending time with the boys and they're doing TikTok too. How crazy is it for you to now, you of course, your son might be the next big thing for LSU football, but your other son looks like the verbal commit to LSU. How you must be a Tiger through and through now. What's it been like for you just to watch your boys grow up and get to this point where they're playing legitimate college football, or one at least on the cusp?
Right. My wife Nikki and I were blessed to have two boys, Max and Jake. Max is he's a quarterback. He wears number 14. He's at LSU in his second year there. He got to start 2 games last year. He's a kid. He's a lefty, so I don't know how that happened. He wears the number 14, what I wore, and all those kind of things. But I pretty much coached Max as a quarterback out of the womb. I mean, we were throwing footballs and tennis balls or frisbees, early age, playing all kinds of games and those kind of things. Teach him the 3 and 5 step drop when he's 7, 8 years old, and just kind of those things. I'm blessed to coach both of them in football, baseball, and basketball from the youth, middle school, and now high school. And it's totally different coaching 2 different kids. So with Max, we were always talking about how to handle your huddle, how to talk to your receivers, how to point the mic, how to react after a touchdown, how to react after an interception, a win or a loss, how to encourage all those players around you. And now he's off in college, and I'm a dad sitting in the stands eating popcorn. I can't yell at him and tell him throw to this receiver or change the protection, or he has great coaches and kind of got to let him go, and really they're more of a support now. And with Jake, my youngest son, he's a rising senior. He's committed to go to LSU in January, and he's a tight end. I don't know how to teach him how to block or how to run routes, but always trying to just, how to get better, how to work at it, and those kind of things. But the other thing with not just 2 sport kids, but you want to just let them grow as kids and let them the birthday parties and playing ultimate frisbee and whatever video games, whatever they want to do, we kind of encourage them to go have fun and be a kid outside of sports too.
The balance, like anything in life, is just so important. So I'm glad that it seems like you weren't pushing them down there. It's just obviously something that took hold from an early age. But yeah, I wanted to jump a little bit into your FSU days, basically to get your whole journey kickstarted. I alluded to the basketball skills. You're a 2-sport athlete. So I think that you were a real big basketball kid in high school, but at some point that decision had to be made to go play football over basketball. Do you recall, was that much of a struggle for you, or was it pretty cut and dry?
Hard decision. Hard decision. Basketball is my love. I grew up in Black Mountain, North Carolina. The player in front of me at my high school was a guy named Brad Doherty, who was an All-American, played in North Carolina, played in the NBA for a while. The coach that was there before me, my high school coach was Bill Burrows, but the guy that was there before him was Roy Williams, who was coach at Carolina. So we grew up in a basketball environment, playing the four corners of the old days. And I never missed a day of playing basketball from second grade all the way through my freshman year of college. Loved it. I was all-state kind of player in high school, scored 2,400 points and loved it. At some point, I realized that I was not going to, I was 6'5", but I wasn't a guy that was going to defend somebody on the wing or at the next level, a pro kind of thing. But I knew I could play in college. I had to make a decision as a senior in high school. I was either going to Georgia Tech to play for a guy named Bobby Crimmins, or I was going to play football. And I could not decide. I waited as long as I could of my senior year, where now kids are committing as sophomores in high school. So I went to Bobby Crimmins on my recruiting trip, and he said, Brad, you got a scholarship here. But there's always that but. I got a guy named Dennis Scott that's coming in here, and he's an All-American, and only play 5 guys. And, that's what it's going to be. So Dennis Scott, who ended up having an 11-year career in the NBA, he doesn't even know me. He changed my life. But I appreciate Coach Crimmins because he was like, Brad, what do you think you have the most potential in? What are your long-term goals? And so I want to be a pro one day. And I just realized my passion for basketball eventually was going to have to grow into football. I was a late bloomer. I threw the football, but I didn't work at it. I didn't know the drops. I didn't know coverages. I was a late bloomer. And so the cool thing, Florida State, they sold me on a guy named Birdie, who was at the University. He just won the Heisman. He wore the number 14. That's why I wore the number 14. 6'5" quarterback. That was where the prototypical pro quarterback was going. And that's kind of how I decided to play football, because I thought I had more potential. But basketball is my love, and that's why I made trick shots and all those kind of things. So I enjoy just shooting now, but that's kind of how the story was. I went to Florida State, real quick on it, and I actually, my freshman year, I was redshirt in football, so I actually walked onto the basketball team and played 2 years of basketball at Florida State. I started for about 13 games, went to the NCAAs twice. So I loved it, but at some point, even in my sophomore year, I had to decide which way I wanted to go, and I knew I had more potential in football.
So can you just speak a little bit about Coach Bowden? Of course, just recently passed away. What was it about him, in your opinion, that made him so great? So few people are synonymous with a school or an institution like he is to FSU.
Right. Coach Bowden, he took over Florida State in 1976. He was the head coach for 34 years. So when I think of Florida State, he is Florida State. Put Florida State on the map, made it a national brand. He was a man of class, humility, organized, a humble person. He was a funny person, an entertainer, a great speaker, a preacher that actually coached football. He shared his faith with all. We had a 14-year run there where we won over 10 games, finished in the top 4 for 14 years in a row. And I just consider him just a guy he knew who he was, and he didn't try to be somebody that he wasn't. Had a great vision for players in recruiting. He was ahead of the game in recruiting, and then had coaches that were great people. He wasn't firing and hiring people all the time. It was a great place to be. And to say when he was there, he had 170 wins when I first got there. He finished his career at, I think, 80, 81, and he ended up with 377 wins. So one of the legends of all time of college football.
Yeah, can you imagine you weren't even there at the halfway point? I mean, how wild was that? It's insane.
Yeah, real quick on that. So he was recruiting me, and he came to my high school. He came up to my house, and he said he gave his spiel about Florida State, and he said, "Do you have any questions for me?" And basically, my 2 questions, I was bold at the time, and I said, "You're gonna play my first question, you're gonna play the best players." I didn't know what else to say. I said, "Yeah, I'm gonna play the best players. I'm here to win." And the next thing, I think he was 3 years old, somewhere around that time. I said, "How many years do you think you're gonna coach?" He says, "Boy, I'm gonna coach a long time. Don't you worry about that." So in my junior year, I think we won his 200th game. We beat, I think it was LSU actually. And at the 200th game, we usually had a 1:30 meeting, like on Wednesdays. He actually called an early meeting at 1 o'clock. And I told my roommate, Gene, his name was Gene Happ. I said, Gene, man, I think something's going down today. He may retire. I don't know. Called this special meeting. And so we got done at 1 o'clock. He actually gave his testimony. And it was really pretty awesome. That doesn't happen very much with coaches or very much in the college professional to share your faith. So that's kind of who he was. And he cared about us off the field as much as on the field. And his impact on us was generational, because now a lot of us have become coaches, fathers, mentors, leaders in our community. So it's generational, the impact he had on our lives.
Oh yeah, I can imagine. So you mentioned being a late bloomer. By the time you make it to the NFL, you've only had, I believe it's 6 starts in your Florida State career. So in today's age, like you basically have no shot. But with how quickly that they spit guys out, you're almost given no chance to develop. Like Sam Darnold is basically on his last legs, which to me is pretty wild. But anyway, what did it mean to you, your first few years in the NFL, to be able to essentially redshirt, learn from Rich Gannon's there right away. Sean Salisbury. I know Jim McMahon comes in. Eventually, Warren Moon's there too. And between actual vets that are on the team, the coaches themselves, do you recall what was the most impactful in terms of you getting ready to actually be a productive NFL player?
Yeah. Again, my senior year, I only played 1 game. Casey Weldon, who's my best friend at Florida State. We came in as freshmen and got drafted at the same time. It's only happened with one other pair of quarterbacks. That was Billy Joe Hobart and Mark Brunell at the University of Washington. So it's a unique story that we have. We're still great friends today. I was a 9th round pick, 227th pick of the 1992 draft. But a piece of advice my dad always told me, he said, it's better to be prepared and not have an opportunity than to have an opportunity and not be prepared. So now you'll get kids in high school as a freshman. In college, if they don't start right away, they're looking to transfer. I was looking to, hey, Coach Bowden, can I get redshirted? I'm not ready to play yet. You don't get kids that say that kind of things now. So in the pros, I was behind Rich Gannon and Sean Salisbury. I was the number 3 QB. I'll be honest with you, I didn't get any. I got some reps in training camp, but I didn't get any reps during the season, not first team reps or not scout team reps. Rich Gannon took all the first team reps. Sean Salisbury took all the scout team reps. The only reps I got were the throws I threw after practice or on Tuesdays on our day off, thrown into a net by myself. So a lot of times you may be thrown into the fire too fast. And some kids can handle it, Peyton Manning and Andrew Luck, but sometimes kids are thrown into the fire too fast. They don't perform. They may have short careers. So I just worked my tail off and was looking for any opportunity and any breadcrumb that I could get.
So is it then fair to say when ultimately you look at how did you make that jump, if you're really not getting a lot of reps in practice, was it any time spent with some of the vets, or was it more coaches, or was it really just you taking the time on your own to do the film study, to go through it? I'm just trying to think through, how does someone in your spot really get themselves ready to be ready for that opportunity, just as, to make your dad's advice, take it home?
No doubt about it. So that first year, I'm like, I didn't really, the plays. It'd be axe, double right spirit leg, 735H pump, double cadence on 2, double right, check with me. And you'd have 3 different audibles. You'd have Charlie 10, you'd have Scram 55, and you had Silver 81 or Silver 83. Like, what do all these plays mean? And so that off season, I'll be honest with you, like, when you say you work harder, like, yeah, we can all go lift weights and we can all go run, but I had to let me learn system football. Let me really spend the time. And so I'd go into a library. I'd go in there with a red pen, yellow pen, green pen, orange pen, pink pen, yellow pen. And I would label who's the X, who's the Y, who's the Z, who's the F, who's the R, what's the shift. Let me learn this thing. Let me learn system football. And then my coach, the guy that drafted me, was a guy named Jack Burns. He gave me one-on-one individual time in that off season the next year. We went through the playbook 3 times. I mean, not just in one day. Like, so when I say one time, that's 3 weeks of work to go through a one-on-one session one time. So that's 9 weeks of just 6-hour days in an office with one-on-one kind of time. So I learned the system. And then that's how it is. You got to, I mean, knowledge is power. But I think a lot of times, I think the mental part of it is more important than anything as far as knowing your system, where everybody's going, where everybody's going to be.
Absolutely. So, at some point though, like any profession, right, you have to perform. So at some point that there has to be the like, okay, we've been working with this guy, Brad seems like he's coming along. At what point do you transition from just being a true student, right, as you just outlined, to having or maybe feeling the pressure of like, now I got to really go out there and show it, because eventually they're not going to keep me around just for the sake of I have some potential.
Yeah, exactly. So in my third year, I'd been there. Warren Moon had become the quarterback in my third year. And I would get a lot of times we'd give him off on Fridays to kind of, he was older at the time, and
Right.
just kind of let everybody be ready for Sundays. I wasn't really getting any playing time, but I was getting more practice time. And I thought I was lighting it up in training camp and practice, but I'm like, I need game time. Again, I only played like 6 games in college. I feel like I'm really, really good in practice, but I need to play. So that was when the World League came back into effect. The World League was, I think it was in 1990. Then it would dissipated. It was gone. But it came back in 1990. I think it was 95. So I asked to go play. And there was 6 teams. There was like London, Amsterdam, Frankfurt, Barcelona, and there was Scotland and one other team. So I went over there. I became the starter it was in the off season. Training camp was for a month in February. Went to London, lived there for 3 months, and played a 10-game schedule, became the leader of a team. I had the ability to make plays, learn from my mistakes, but lead a team. I never really didn't have that chance. So that was the biggest, boldest move of my career, to go ask to go play. Now, the greatness of it was I knew the system in Minnesota. So it wasn't like I left and had to go learn that system, which I did, and then come back and learn some new system. I knew the Minnesota system. So when I came back, I was ready to grow in that one. But to lead a team, to make mistakes, those mistakes I made, dealing with some adversity in London, were the best things I ever happened in my career. Took a chance. A lot of guys that went over there, they didn't make it back. But the guys that did make it, you had careers. Kurt Warner made it. John Kidna made it. Jay Fiedler made it. A lot of quarterbacks did not make it. But the ones that survived it, you thrived.
Funny you mentioned Jay Fiedler, because I actually, between the basketball background, having this couple year period of your beginning of your NFL career, I felt that there was a bit of an overlap between the two of you guys. And, he doesn't have the Super Bowl to his name, though. And that beautiful banner behind you makes me want to jump, just in the interest of time, a little bit to getting to that stage in your career where, you eventually become a great player at Minnesota, to the point where they have to make a really tough decision. Go to Washington, eventually you end up in Tampa. Can you just speak a little bit about what it takes to be on a great team? Because of course, what Coach Green did in Minnesota, there was certainly flashes there of really strong teams. Maybe Washington wasn't quite ready at that time, but of course, Tampa, you win the Super Bowl. When you think about why some teams are successful, of course, talent's a big part of it. But can you put your hand on any, or your finger rather, on any intangibles that have to exist in that locker room, in that group of men to actually be a true champion?
Yeah, I think at some point in your life, you have to have adversity. You have to have adversity. What makes you tough? What makes you thick in your skin? What's going to drive you? How are you going to get there? Because it's not going to be easy. Whatever it is, it's going to be, no matter how great you are, you're going to have to go through the ring of fire at some point. And a lot of the players at Tampa Bay, they had been through the ring of fire. They'd had a lot of the Warren Sapps, the Derek Brooks, the John Lynches. They had some great teams. They went through a tough time of trying to just win games and change the outlook of Tampa Bay. And I'd been through my whole career. And so it was a perfect match when we got together. And I think when Gruden came, he did make some moves in free agency. That doesn't get talked about enough. The guys he brought in, Keenan McCardell, Joe Jurevicius, Michael Pittman, and Robin Owen, and Kerry Jenkins, and Ricky Dudley, and Ken Derry. It goes on. But you need players, you need talent, but then you need the word belief. You got to believe. You got to be able to not talk about it verbally, but you got to believe that you're going to win that thing. Nothing's going to get in your way. We had our term that year was pound the rock. No matter what it takes, we're just going to keep pounding the rock, and eventually we're going to break that rock and we're going to win. And so for us pounding that rock that year, we'd lost to Philadelphia 2 or 3 times in the playoffs and regular season. They were our nemesis. They beat us like a drum up in Philadelphia. I broke my ribs in that game, was out for a couple of weeks, and then came back and we went in the NFC Championship. We had to go back through Philly, playing the cold, on the road, last game of the vet. But that was the belief, the adversity that we had been through. And then we were tight. And we believed that we were going to get it done, and we did.
Yeah, just speaking of some of the guys on that team, it's bringing me back. I think it's the first time that I was old enough to appreciate basically a number one offense versus a number one defense. And certainly Tampa Bay could bring the noise on defense. What did it mean to you being basically the leader of the offense, knowing that everyone was putting all the pressure on the defense? Did you feel like there wasn't a lot of pressure on you because the defense was getting all the attention? Or did that make you want to raise your game? I mean, do you just remember your perception of the team and what you needed to do because everyone knew just the killers on that side of the ball?
Right. Well, we had 3 guys make Hall of Fame with Warren Sapp, Derek Brooks, and John Lynch. Had some great players, Simeon Rice and Rondé Barber that might make it one day, Greg Spire, Sheldon Quarles, Dexter Jackson, Brian Kelly, the list goes on. But we had a lot of rock stars on offense too, with Keyshawn Johnson and Allstott, and the list goes on. So, but there's a perception, and the defense had earned that perception about being a great defense. But when I came to Tampa, I also remember talking to Tony Dungy. He said, listen, we've scored a lot of points, but we didn't score the points in the right games. So sometimes they may have had a game that we won 45-10, but then maybe they lost that game 20-17. Maybe you lost that important game 21-20 or 17-14. Like, you're going to be in some tight games in the NFL. So, and that, he said, Brad, that's why you're coming here, to win those tight games. I don't necessarily need 45 points a game, but I got to win the games that are tight. In the NFL, it comes down to 2-minute situations, a 4-minute situation, and that was the biggest reason why I came there. So perception-wise, we didn't get a lot of credit on offense, but it wasn't like we wasn't Indians either. So, but we scored a lot of points that people didn't really expect and made it happen.
And to be fair, isn't that one of your Pro Bowl years? It is in Tampa. I mean, it's not like the offense was nothing. It was just the hype around it was that defense versus the Oakland offense.
You got some Hall of Famers too, but we averaged over 28 points a game. If you look at if you look at Tampa Bay this past year, they were 7-5 after 12 games. Like, are they even going to make the playoffs? And then they won the last 8 games, got on a roll. Then you talk about the credit of the offense, but they're defensively, they scored 145 points off turnovers and then 45 in the playoffs, but they're not being sold. So it's how it's being sold, the perception of it. And offensively, if you look at us halfway through the season, like, we were on fire. And people just don't talk about it.
And it must have been nice, when you say pound the ball. I mean, between Pittman and Mike Allstott, I mean, talk about just guys that could absolutely pound the ball. It was one of my favorite teams. And what's it like for you to be able to see John Lynch get inducted? I mean, I feel like every few years, because Derek Brooks wasn't that long ago, that of course, neither was Warren. It feels like you guys were able to get back together and essentially, have some of that Super Bowl glory. Talk about the old days.
We've had a few reunions along the way. They did a 10-year reunion, Super Bowl reunion. Then they've done a bunch of guys that have been in the Ring of Honor. And we've had 3 guys in the Hall of Fame. So when those gatherings take place, we do gather. We do enjoy great friendships, great respect with everybody. But Lynch was my roommate for 3 years in Tampa. He ended up being a TV guy, broadcasting games. Then ended up being the GM of the 49ers and making the Hall of Fame. But it was really cool at his party at the Hall of Fame in Canton a week ago. Like, he had Lionel Richie was singing all night long and all that kind of stuff. But how he's respected he had 3 different organizations with the Bucks, the Broncos, played in 2 different divisions, 2 different leagues, and now he's a GM. So he had 3 different organizations representing him. And so if you're going to win, I talk about adversity, talk about belief, but then you also got to talk about character, who your team is and who the guys are, and so it's just a strong group of guys. But John Lynch was probably the best leader of any team that I've ever been on. I'm not saying best player, I'm saying best leader of camaraderie, of bringing everybody together. That's a unique trait that he has.
And I think that I recall seeing John Lynch in a Patriot uniform one preseason. So I did want to ask, part of you being able to play in the league so long is, at a time, you're playing with Andre Reed, but not when he's with the Bills. Tim Brown, not when he's with the Raiders, and certainly Irving Fryer. When you see guys at the end of their career, particularly great guys like that are Hall of Fame, I think Irving's pretty close.
Yep.
What stood out to you about the guys that were Hall of Fame guys? Even if you didn't see them while they were in their peak, what was different about their approach to the game versus the guys that you just weren't on that level?
I think talent, they may have been just a little bit better. Just a little bit better. The Chris Carters, he had phenomenal hands, the Randy Moss, all that stuff. It showcases itself. But talent-wise, they might have been just a little bit better. But what really sticks out to me is how they prepared for every practice, how they were there at meetings, taking notes. Yeah, I think a big thing for me, like sitting in the quarterback room, I'll be honest with you, like the guys that would sit back in their chairs and put their feet up on the table, I'm like, they ain't going to make it. They're not going to make it. They need, I ain't saying you got to be a choir boy and sit there and stand up and, take the proper notes, but you got to be on your game. The guys that have made it, they have something different about them. And I think it's the way they approach every day, the way they take care of the body, the way they show up for meetings, their leadership skills with others, and then their ability to be ready on game day. So that's to be able to perform on game day and just and being smart, like understand the game system, understand the players around you, and making those players around you better players. That's a gift also. So encourage somebody beside yourself is what I tell a lot of people.
And I wanted to just ask you a little bit about the adversity. You outlined getting into the league, but one thing that I kind of skipped over was basically, when it's Randall Cunningham, and basically it feels like it's a war of attrition at times. Who's going to get hurt? And that's sort of when the torch gets passed. So whether it's dealing with injuries, dealing with losing the starting job, even if it's due to an injury, getting traded. Washington has always loved to give up draft picks for guys. How did you deal with sort of just getting a monkey wrench maybe thrown into your plans and how you thought things were going to go? Because it certainly happened to you a number of times over the years.
Yeah, no doubt. Sometimes I was replaced with injury, like in '98 with Randall Cunningham, but that year was pretty cool because not a broken neck, but I had a bad neck deal, lost strength in my hand, had a broken foot, had a broken thumb. I only played 3 games, but we won those 3 games. And so the other games I was really just backing up because I couldn't even dress out. And everybody would make it a controversy and those kind of things. But what you learn is no matter what the noise is around you, no matter what the perception is, the only thing that you're taught that you can control is your attitude and effort. It's the only thing you can control, your attitude and effort. So, and I think the ability to embrace adversity, expect it, and then put it in your bag and learn how to deal with it the next time. So I think for me, just knowing that there's a long-term, in the end, if I stick to like knowing my system, taking care of my body, when I'm healthy, when I give them those opportunities, I'll come through in the clutch. So that's kind of my approach. But attitude and effort goes a long ways in life. And it's interesting, even at John Lynch's party, I look at the room and I'm like, well, you know what? Peyton Manning, he didn't get to finish his career with the Colts. Tom Brady, he didn't really get to finish his career with the Patriots. Joe Montana didn't really get to finish his career with the 49ers or Jerry Rice, or most people you're going to have. John Lynch didn't get to finish his career in Tampa. So we're all going to be kicked out of the room at some point. Coaches are fired and hired. So how are you going to deal with it? But if you stick true to who you are and your attitude and effort, things usually kind of work out.
Definitely. And speaking of the end of careers, the best job I can imagine, and there's a great joke by Daniel Tosh about Brett Favre not retiring because you can make so much money as a backup that why would you ever retire as a quarterback?
Right.
You get to go to Dallas, and you spend a couple years backing up Romo. At that point in your life, did you feel like you were able to help younger quarterbacks? Because now you're clearly in to be that sort of older mentor and not necessarily push for the starting job. Did you recall, were you actually able to do much there, or was that just a pretty nice to show up and, have guys like T.O. and Jason Witten to throw the ball to?
Right. It was an exceptional team. My first year there, I think we were 13-3, number one seed in the NFC. Jason Garrett was the offensive coordinator. I had a great relationship with him. I'd been with him. I brought him to Tampa, and then he brought me to Dallas. And the first year was kind of fun for me because Tony was young, but he was kind of in the growing beginning stages of his great quarterback play. And so I felt like I had an impact with him my first year. And then he took off to different levels. And then I was 39 at that time. I felt like my body was pretty good, honestly, at 39. And then at 40, my body started falling apart. I'm going to need 2 knee replacements. My elbows started going. My shoulders started going. There were days on Mondays after games, I didn't even play the game. I'm like, I couldn't even do the running with the team because I just couldn't. My body wouldn't let me do it. So the way my body finished my career at 40, it kind of helped me to retire. It gave me like, I can't produce anymore. I can't even run anymore, not alone play. So that was ending my career. So it kind of helped me transition a little faster than let me play one more year kind of thing.
And how do you feel today?
Well, I can't run. Okay. So my knees, I will need 2 knee replacements probably in the next couple of years. But I'm able to, I play golf. I'm able to do my trick shots on TikTok, coaching high school football. So I'm able to get around pretty good. I lift weights, I work out, I do all those kind of things. I just can't run the way I would like to just go exercise sometimes.
All right. So pretty good. Knees, little work, but I mean, you're no stranger to adversity. So I'm sure this is going to be nothing.
Right. We'll make it.
Well, Brad, as we wrap this up, I just got to ask you to go through the gauntlet. Got a couple quick questions for you, starting with what's most important. Is it having the number one offense or the number one defense?
You put me in a box. That's not the gauntlet I want to be in. So I'm as quarterback, I'm going to say offense, but it's a team game.
Fair enough. Did you have a pregame ritual that you had to stick to?
Yeah, I wore 3 jerseys to every game. So I wear one in first half, warm-ups, one in the first half, one in the second half. I always like to change. I always have the fresh jersey. That was one of my rituals I always had.
Love it. I've never heard that before. Players or scheme, which is most important in winning?
It takes both and coaches, but you better have players if you're going to even have a chance.
Fair enough. You've played with so many guys. Was there ever a coach or a player that you did wish you had the chance to play with, but it just never materialized?
I play with legends, some legends. The 2 players I would have loved to play with, I felt like Torrey Holt with the St. Louis Rams at the time. I felt like his style of play would have fit mine perfect because he was smart. He would get to spots on the field. You could just throw him open. Tremendous competitor. And the other one would have been LaDainian Tomlinson. As a back, I felt like I was a quarterback that threw a lot of I could find my back as an outlet on checkdowns or whatever it may be. I think our games hit LaDainian Tomlinson or Marshall Faulk. Those 3 guys, it would have changed my whole career for sure.
Now, you did mention Chris Carter, so I wanted to ask, in your opinion, who had the best hands of anyone you played with? Does anyone top him?
I don't think so. I think Chris had the best hands. He was phenomenal at end zone catches. He was phenomenal at catching balls on the sidelines, tapping his both feet in. Phenomenal at catching the ball one hand. I think his hands, to me, by far were the best hands in football. And I felt like Randy Moss was the best deep threat ball guy in the league. Those are 2 guys. They were unbelievable receivers and all that kind of stuff. But Chris had the best hands, and Randy, I felt, was the best deep ball guy.
Well, to close this out, we've had a lot of pieces of advice sprinkled in there. But if we can end on one, what would you say is your best piece of advice that you would give on how to have a successful career?
Have a passion for what you're doing. And be good at what you're doing. Don't learn the tricks of the trade, learn the trade. And the rest of it will take care take care of yourself, but have passion about it and embrace adversity.
There you have it. So it is Big Bad Brad on TikTok, Brad_Johnson_14, at least on Instagram, maybe even Twitter as well. But is there any other place people can follow you?
No, that's it. You got me. Big Bad Brad 14 on TikTok, and like you said, on Instagram and Twitter. So it's good. Have fun with it. Enjoy some of the videos.
Brad, thank you so much for taking the time. And of course, best wishes this football season for not just your team that you're coaching, but for your boys. I'm looking forward to watching some games soon.
Awesome. It's going to be a great fall. I appreciate it, man. Thanks for having me on your show.